Good evening. I'd like to call the October 20th Falmouth Planning Board meeting to order. First item on the agenda tonight is minutes of October 13th.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes of October 13, 2015 as modified.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. The next is approval not required plans. Do we have anything?
No, sir.
Hearing none, the next we'll move on to public hearing. Zoning article for November 11th, 2015 special town meeting. Article to see if the town will vote to amend the Chapter 240 zoning of the Code of Falmouth by adding the following Article 34, Wind Energy Systems. 240-66D2, any wind energy systems owned by the town of Falmouth and used for municipal purposes in existence as of the date of the bylaw shall be exempt from the provisions of this article pursuant to section 240-30B and may be allowed to operate as a matter of right in a public use district or do or take any other action on this matter on the request of the Board of Selectmen. For the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. My name is Frank Duffy. I'm Town Council. I'm going to start the remarks tonight. With me here tonight is Julian Suso, who's the Town Manager. He'll have some remarks. Heather Harper, Assistant Town Manager, will have some remarks. We also have a couple of selectmen here, Sue Moran and Sam Patterson. And if they speak, it'll be probably extemporaneous. The present status of the turbines under the zoning bylaw is unclear because of a decision of the Massachusetts Appeals Court and the adoption of the current Wind Energy Systems bylaw at the April 2013 annual town meeting, which was a Wind Energy Systems bylaw that you crafted and presented to the town meeting at that time. Let me give you a brief history. The building commissioner issued a building permit for Wind 1 in 2009 without requiring a special permit from the Board of Appeals. He did this following his past practice, and he consulted with the town planner and with me as the town council. The zoning bylaw in 2009 and today contains section 240-30B, which permits all municipal purposes in a public use district. The bylaw also contains section 240-33G5, which provides that a windmill, and uses the word windmill, as an accessory use in a public use district by special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's some conflict between those two provisions of the zoning bylaw. The building commissioner made two determinations. First, he determined that the wind turbine served a municipal purpose and therefore was allowed by right in a public use district under section 240-30B. The second determination that he made was that the wind turbine was not an accessory structure, and as a use permitted by right in the district, it did not need a special permit from the ZBA under section 240-33G5. So based upon that determination, he then issued a building permit for Wind 1. It went into construction, and it became operational in the spring of 2010. And thereafter, we started on the saga that we've been following for the last 5 years or so. Following its operation, the neighbors filed a request for zoning enforcement with the building commissioner, alleging that Wind 1 should have been built with a special permit from the Board of Appeals. The building commissioner disagreed, and he affirmed his issuance of the building permit. This followed an appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board of Appeals held a hearing, and following that hearing, it too affirmed the decision of the building commissioner. As is the right of the neighbors, they appealed to Superior Court. We had a trial over several days in January and February of 2013, and the Superior Court affirmed the decision of the building commissioner and the decision of the ZBA and ruled that a special permit was not required under the circumstances. There again, we went to the appeals court in Massachusetts, which is the next court up the ladder. And in the spring of this year, I think it was in May of 2015, it reversed the decision of the Superior Court and determined that a special permit was required. In compliance with the appeals court decision, the building commissioner ordered the town of Falmouth to apply to the ZBA for a special permit for Wind 1. The town did in fact file an application for a special permit. It was filed on July 8th of 2015. And that application is scheduled to start the public hearing before the ZBA next Thursday night, which is the 29th of October. And we expect it will start. We don't expect it will finish. It will likely go over the course of several nights. Now, a question came up immediately as to which bylaw applied, the one that was in force in 2010 or the one that you adopted or the town adopted in 2013. The Zoning Board of Appeals took that matter under advisement, and the hearing that will start on October 29th will be based upon the section 240-166 of the zoning bylaw, which is the section relating to windmills, which was in effect in 2009 when the original building permit was issued. The ZBA has made a determination that the 2013 wind energy systems bylaw does not apply to a building or structure built with a building permit issued before the adoption of the current bylaw. Under the old section 241, Therefore, the Zoning Board of Appeals is the special permit granting authority as it currently exists. Now, this decision has also been appealed to Superior Court, where it is probably not going to come to trial for a hearing for some time. It's kind of just out there waiting for resolution, but there is no resolution. So at the present time, the Zoning Board of Appeals is going forward under the bylaw that existed in 2009 when the building permit was issued. Now, it should be noted that at the town meeting in 2013, the only thing that we knew and that the voters knew was that the Superior Court had ruled that a special permit was not required. The current section of 240-166, which was adopted in 2013, contains no provision for the protection of a wind turbine built before its adoption in good faith and in reliance upon a building permit issued at that time. In fact, the only thing before town meeting in April of 2013 was that the Superior Court had ruled that a building permit was valid and no special permit was necessary. The confluence of the court decision, which came down this spring, and the amendment to the zoning bylaw in section in 2013 has situated the town in what we consider to be a precarious position, and it jeopardizes an investment of approximately $10 million into 2 wind turbines. The Zoning Board of Appeals has determined that it will hear the special permit application under the former section 240-166, but as we know, and I just reported to you, that decision has been appealed to Superior Court and litigation is likely to continue for some time. If the Board of Appeals grants the special permit, that decision too will likely be appealed to Superior Court and more litigation will follow. If it is determined that section 240-166 as amended by the 2013 amendment applies, then the planning board, you folks, had a special permit granting authority, but you have no authority to grant a special permit because you have eliminated the consideration of any wind turbine, which is the size of the 2 wind turbines that exist at the wastewater treatment facility. So from a permitting point of view, the town of Falmouth has some kind of a dilemma here, and that is the purpose of the article that has been submitted by the Board of Selectmen, and hopefully, if you approve of it and recommend it, and town meeting approves it, it will resolve the permitting issue. Won't resolve all issues, but it will resolve the permitting issue. The question of whether the pre-2013 version or the post-2013 version becomes moot if this amendment is passed. The town-owned wind turbines in existence as of April 2013 will be exempt from the provisions of 24166 and will be permitted to continue under Chapter 240-30B of the zoning bylaw, which permits all municipal purposes in a public use district. This amendment would conform to the spirit and intent of the bylaw as originally interpreted by the building commissioner, and it will allow municipal infrastructure to exist and continue to exist in a public use district. And I want you to remember that these wind turbines are in a public use district, which is those districts that are set aside under the zoning bylaw where a municipality puts its infrastructure. And as we know, not all infrastructure makes the greatest of neighbors, but nevertheless, there's a purpose for them and they should be allowed somewhere. I would like to point out to you, in just concluding, as I made a comment, that this amendment to the zoning bylaw will address the issue of the permit. It does not address the issue and will not solve the issue of whether or not the operation of Wind 1 or Wind 2 is a nuisance. There are 6 cases pending in Superior Court, 3 alleging common law nuisance, 3 alleging nuisance under the zoning bylaw. Those cases will continue. They will not be resolved by this amendment. This amendment, however, will resolve the permitting issue. And that is worth something, and it's one of the reasons why the Board of Selectmen brought it forth. That basically concludes my preliminary remarks. Mr. Suso is here, who will talk about some other aspects of this issue. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. Julian Suso, Falmouth Town Manager. Thank you for the opportunity to make a few remarks this evening. I am going to be reading excerpts from a summary of revenue and expenses, a copy of which I believe you were provided earlier. I do want to apologize in advance if inadvertently the one or more attachments were omitted. If that is the case, we will be transmitting those to you under separate cover. At the 314-acre wastewater treatment facility site, there are 2 wind turbines, known as Wind 1 and Wind 2. Wind 1 was installed and commissioned in 2010. Wind 2 was installed and commissioned in 2012. The wind turbines were installed at the wastewater treatment facility because it is the town's single largest user of electricity as a source of power for treatment of sewage. As I believe the Planning Board is aware, due to compliance with a ZBA temporary cease and desist order, Wind 1 is currently not operating, and if it remains inoperative for a period of 6 months, the lost revenue will be approximately $200,000 to $230,000 for that 6-month period. As noted, Wind 1 was installed and commissioned in 2010 at a cost of approximately $5.2 million. The purchase and construction of Wind 1 was financed by 3 separate financial transactions. The town borrowed $4.9 million and issued municipal bonds in that amount, which was payable over a 20-year period. In addition, the town entered into 2 agreements to sell renewable energy certificates representing the electricity generated by Wind 1. Those renewable energy certificates are also known by the acronym of REC, R-E-C. The renewable energy certificates purchase agreement currently in effect is with the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center in the town of Falmouth. The total payments on the $4.9 million Wind One borrowing over the 20-year period amount to $6,886,025.36. If the wind turbines are shut down or fail to operate a sufficient number of hours daily, the town will be required to make these payments with general tax revenue, as there will be no income from the sale of electricity or renewable energy credits to make these payments. The debt due cannot be prepaid and must be paid in full over the 20-year period. Under the terms of the Renewable Energy Certificate Purchase Agreement, the town agrees to sell to the Mass CEC all renewable certificates attributable to the energy produced by Wind One during each year. The Mass CEC has already made a lump sum payment to the town in the amount of $1,010,623. This sum has already been expended by the town to finance the construction of Wind One. In the event of a default caused by a permanent shutdown of Wind One, the town must refund this amount in excess of $1 million to the Mass CEC. If the town fails to meet the estimated production of renewable energy credits, it shall pay in each year a stipulated payment of $42 for each REC shortfall. If the wind turbines are shut down, the estimated payment for the last 6 months of FY 2016 is $65,000. For fiscal year 2017, that same amount, shutdown amount, will represent $137,004 due. The stipulated payment for a complete and permanent shutdown would be $42 per REC times 48,924 RECs, for a total of $2,054,808 due the state from the town. The town would be required to make all these payments with general revenue from taxpayers, as there will be no income from the sale of electricity or renewable energy credits to make the payments. As noted, Wind 2 was installed and commissioned in 2012. Its financing differs significantly from Wind 1 financing. Loan funds originated with the United States under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, otherwise known as ARRA, A-R-R-A. To summarize the terms of that loan agreement and the project regulatory agreement, the total loans of $4,865,000 were dispersed to the town to acquire and to install Wind 2. The original interest rate is 0%. The loan qualifies for full principal forgiveness under certain conditions, namely that the town operate and maintain Wind 2 as an energy efficiency project. By this, it is understood that Wind 2 must be continuously operated as a source of renewable energy. If Wind 2 ceases to operate as an ongoing source of renewable energy, the loan forgiveness disappears, and the town owes $4,865,000 plus interest at 2%. So interest begins to accrue in the shutdown. When I learned that the operation of Wind 2 might be jeopardized by the present and other litigation, I inquired with the state about the application of loan forgiveness under circumstances of an injunctive shutdown. By a letter to me dated April 2nd, 2013, the state advised that if Wind 2 is used in a manner that is not consistent with an energy efficiency project, the state will not be able to approve the request, and the town will not be allowed to utilize the ARRA funds with principal forgiveness. The town will be required to make the refund payment of $4,865,000 related to Wind 2 in a lump sum with general tax revenue or other available cash. The town furthermore cannot borrow to repay indebtedness, as such borrowing is not permitted by Massachusetts general law. Only a future special act of the legislature could authorize borrowing for this special purpose. The town believes that the wind turbines must continue to be operated for significant hours each day to meet this requirement and avoid this disastrous repayment. In the event of a shutdown of Wind 1, The town will lose all the electricity generated by that wind turbine and will then be required to appropriate approximately $60,000 each fiscal year from tax revenue to pay for the purchase of supplemental electricity to operate the wastewater treatment plant. If both turbines are shut down, that same cost will be $120,000 annually. The town initially operated both wind turbines on a 24-hour basis. In April of 2012, the Board of Selectmen voluntarily reduced the hours of operation to 12 hours per day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., in response to concerns expressed by neighbors. This voluntary reduction by the Board of Selectmen in hours of operation was also intended by the board to encourage neighbors to enter into a formal consensus-building process with the aid of a professional mediator. The consensus-building meetings commenced in April 2012 and ended 8 months later with no substantive resolution. Representatives of the Board of Selectmen and the Office of the Town Manager were in attendance at all or nearly all of the 25 separate meetings which were held in this process. Neighborhood representatives and advocates did not see any potential compromise. There was a consistent demand for cessation and removal of both wind turbines. At the request of the Board of Selectmen, a question was placed on the ballot in May of 2013 to seek the authority of the town to begin a process of decommissioning and removal of both wind turbines. At this May 2013 annual town election, voters overwhelmingly rejected the ballot question, which would have authorized and affirmed that this decommissioning and removal of both town wind turbines would occur. Following this decisive election, the Board of Selectmen conducted a comprehensive 2-month review of potential mitigation strategies and operational plans. In September 2013, the Board of Selectmen adopted operating hours of 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. to sustain extended nighttime quiet and to eliminate an operational budget deficit, thereby deferring additional funds that would have been generated by further expanded operations, including those nighttime hours, and therefore those funds would also have potentially been available for mitigation. This decision was made by the Board of Selectmen as they found through previous processes I've already described that the only mitigation acceptable to the neighbors was the complete shutdown and dismantling of the wind turbines. Later in November 2013, the Superior Court, by preliminary injunction, ordered the wind turbines to operate from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with no operation on Sundays and on certain holidays. That concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman. I would ask, we do have an additional presentation by Assistant Town Manager Heather Harper, which I would ask if it would be agreeable, whether we could defer to the end of this hearing. We'd be guided by your preference.
I have a question for Mr. Suso.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Suso, the figures that you've given us tonight are based upon an assumed 20-year running of the turbines. Is that correct?
There's a general presumption that that would be the reasonable life of the turbine, subject to mechanical realities.
And if that is subject, would the town, if they fail before the 20 years, to what degree would the town still be responsible for the repayment of the loans, or is that somehow covered?
My understanding is we remain fully responsible for all those loans, whether the turbines operate or do not operate. It is our financial obligation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like the town to finish their presentation.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
You just take a moment to get this. I'm not sure if the machine is running.
Charge the lights.
Thank you. I'm Heather Harper. I'm the Assistant Town Manager for the Town of Falmouth. Make sure I hit the right key here. The purpose of this presentation this evening is to provide the Planning Board with some background, including the motivation of the property owner, which is the town, the public purpose of the project, the responsibility and responsiveness of the property owner. This project really goes back 13 years. And its basis is policy action by the Board of Selectmen to ensure that our community has the financial and environmental capacity to provide clean water and strong services for this and future generations of the town of Falmouth. This policy goal is aligned by multiple decisions, including those of the local comprehensive plan, the energy plan, and particularly a feasibility study that required the town to dedicate resources, including the town engineering department, the town planning department, the wastewater superintendent, and the GIS manager. That goes back to 2005. Of course, the Board of Selectmen's strategic plan. In accordance with those plans, there have been many other energy efficiency projects, including industrial scale motor upgrades, solar panels installed, street lighting improvements, building envelope improvements, HVAC systems. Many of those you are aware of. There have been 8 town meeting actions dating back to 2005, affirming the project. In 2005, 2006, 2 in 2007, 2008, 2 in 2009, and again in 2010. The Falmouth Wind Project team is really just presented to give you a sense of the very broad base of community support, of technical assistance, including multiple contractors, Weston and Sampson and subconsultants. Bill Vashon is a technical consultant for wind turbines. Sustainable Energy Advantage, Bernstein, Kushner, and Kimmel was a legal consultant who helped with the interconnection process. General contractors, collaborators, and multiple town departments, the Board of Selectmen, our Energy Committee, town managers, town council, engineering department, town planning department, and the Department of Public Works. Just to orient the board, and I know you're all very familiar with this, but this is the project area. The light lavender that you see is the public use district, and that large, over 300-acre parcel is the site of the town's 2 wind turbines. The dark pink is the steamship authority. Over to the further right hand of the property, of course, is the town landfill, our industrial and technology park, as well as what I've always referred to as the stump dump, but the compost facility. This area has been planned for many years as part of our industrial zone and has operated as such for many, many years. In terms of the site itself, this is a site plan that goes back to 2009 and was presented to town meeting in June of 2009. Shows the turbine 1 next to many of the leaching areas at the wastewater treatment facility, and then the other proposed further back behind the newer wastewater treatment plant, which was constructed right in that time zone. And really dating back to the very beginning, there was a real policy marriage of renewable energy, sustaining clean water goals. That the clean water goals at the time really were focused on the town's local comprehensive plan, cleaning the coastal waters in Great Green and Boynes Pond. That was very active at the time, and the town really saw the need for growth in wastewater treatment and the need for energy to support those services for the town. And that really was the motivation of the project going back to 2003. There were 8 years of thoughtful decisions of this town leading to the construction of Wind 1. In January 2011, 2005, a letter was sent to all of the abutters from the Energy Committee. That followed a 2004 public presentation by Sally Wright of UMass of the Wind Energy Center. Much of this was contributed by the town's Energy Committee. There was a study of the view shed, a lot of concern about what these turbines might look like from historic sites. And so there was a visual simulation performed. This just happens to be one of the images from Chappaquiddick Beach. There are many. This happens to be from Bourne Farm. You can see the turbine blades up over the trees. Then this goes back to, I don't have the date on this, but about 2005, 2006. Community outreach continued with a letter to the abutters in 2005 from the Town Energy Committee. Again, in April of 2005, And it's my understanding that the letters were sent to abutters within 900 feet of the property zone, which, as you know, is 3 times that which is required for regulatory purposes. Most of the background on this project has been widely available to any community member dating back to 2008, when any of the studies that were done with public funds, the Mass Technology Collaborative, were placed on their website. They're all on the town's website, which is down on the right. And then, of course, the Consensus Building website, Institute website, which I will share with you in a moment. There were multiple technical reports performed in 2002, 2003, 2005, and down in 2006. So this is you can all read, I won't read them all to you. And I'll leave a copy of the report for this presentation. The permitting was pursued with the town engineering department and the energy committee, and the first permit they received was a preliminary determination from the Federal Aviation Administration identifying the project as feasible and that there was no adverse effect, and that was received in May of 2006. There was the KEMA study, which has been the subject of a lot of conversation. The scope was recommended and approved by the Mass Clean Energy Center. They were the leading advisor on wind energy. The report was reviewed by the town engineer and the Mass CEC, and it was developed in accordance with industry standards at the time. It included a range of turbine sizes from a 660 kilowatt to a 2.5 megawatt turbine, a whole megawatt larger than what was installed there. And it recommended what's known as a private developer model. The financial plan that was proposed would have allowed a private developer to come in and lease a portion of the property and install a wind turbine. The developer would have control over the sale of renewable energy, which could then be used by the developer or the purchaser to offset the generation of fossil fuels. It could have generated a positive cash flow of $250,000 to $450,000. It was not consistent with the town goals or policies established by the Board of Selectmen, and the town did not move forward with the project. Our goal was to harness wind energy for the benefit of the town of Falmouth, to avoid long-term reliance on the growing cost of municipal operations with the town. As you all know, this was in a very challenging environment for all municipalities in Massachusetts and across the nation and really across the world. It was the beginning of the deepest recession of our generation, and so the idea of finding a renewable energy resource to sustain municipal operations was something this community really put their arms around. The town, again, did not move forward. The project motivation was not financial. It was an overall sustainability project. A year later, in 2007, an alternative town ownership business plan was presented to the town. This is really when I became involved in the project. The financial analysis and assumptions were thoroughly vetted. Those included the repayment terms, the productivity, all the issues that needed to be studied to make sure that what was presented as a viable alternative truly could be supported by town revenues. The business plan established that a town ownership model could work. The town manager and the Board of Selectmen recommended moving ahead. The community outreach continued. In 2007, a letter from the Energy Committee was sent to the neighbors, and you can see that there was a reference to a 1.5 megawatt wind turbine sent by the Energy Committee, and that following that was an October 15th, 2007 Energy Committee presentation to the Board of Selectmen on the project. So the permitting process was then reinitiated. The Mass Historical Commission was filed in October of 2007, and we received a notice from them that there was no adverse effect, and that really goes back to some of the simulations you saw earlier. There were multiple permits issued, including the United States Air Force Space Command review and approval, the town building permit, the Building Code Board of Appeals, multiple, including special legislation. And I want to talk just a moment for special legislation. That was legislation that was endorsed 2 times by town meeting, an initial legislation, then an amended legislation. That amended legislation was the essence of what was adopted in the Green Communities Act and serves as the model for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that was adopted by this town. The site planning process was guided and worked in analysis in close cooperation with the knowledgeable staff representatives of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, acknowledging that this site was appropriate. The studies, pre-permitting, legislative authority, and financial feasibility was complete. It took the town from 2004 to 2007 to determine that it would move ahead with the project. The town did initially enter into negotiation with the Mass Technology Collaborative. They did own 2 wind turbines, and there was an effort to try and acquire one of those turbines from the Mass Clean Energy Center. The town was unable to reach an agreement on terms with the Mass Clean Energy Center, and those negotiations ended. The project moved ahead without the Mass Clean Energy Center. In 2007, the town hired Weston and Sampson to help develop a basis of design, to procure a contractor, and that basis of design was based essentially on the Jiminy Peak model, which is out in Hancock, Massachusetts, and you can see a 1.5 megawatt turbine located in a very heavily used recreational facility in Jiminy Peak. That location was visited by some of the town technical staff and recommended as a model that may be feasible at our wastewater facility site. The project was designed to meet all existing standards, including the setbacks and fall zones. The public use determination was certainly an issue. The town was prepared for any decision of the building commissioner. The public use district lacked clarity, and there was uncertainty as what permitting path would be required. There was a potential for a special permit. It was discussed, and it was anticipated. The town was ready to issue the IFB, the invitation for bids, and we needed to have guidance from our building commissioner as to what direction he intended the town to take on that. Again, it lacked clarity. A draft application was prepared for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and ultimately, the building commissioner issued a municipal use memo in accordance with the zoning bylaw, indicating that the turbine was allowable by right as a public use. So the IFB was then issued 2 weeks later. The town was not able, under the Procurement Act, to dictate what turbine manufacturer to use. We had to identify performance specifications and review bids that meet those performance evaluations. Like any public procurement, we can't specify particular products. The bids ranged from $4.2 to $5.3 million. These are the results. You can see Loomis Construction at $4.2 million, EOS Ventures at $5.3, and Jay Cashman with the first of the potential GE turbines. Now, we have an obligation and a responsibility under the Procurement Act to evaluate the low bidder first. You have to bypass the low bidder to get to any of the other bidders. So what we did was there was more community outreach. I think it's important to continue that. On October 6, 2008, the Energy Committee made another presentation to the Board of Selectmen. Ultimately, the low bidder, that Loomis Construction, was rejected because the manufacturer of the turbine was inexperienced. They couldn't verify that the turbine would meet the standards and specifications that the town established for performance. And as it turns out, that producer is no longer manufacturing turbines. The low bidder protested to the Attorney General, as is their right. The town then had to defend its decision to bypass the low bidder. And any of you that are familiar with public bidding, you know that's a very high bar. We needed to go through that process. Ultimately, the town did prevail at the Attorney General's hearing. There was another letter sent in April 2009 to the abutters, identifying that we are now looking specifically at the Vestas 1.65 megawatt turbine. The GE turbine was presented by the 3rd highest bidder. And I want to talk a little bit about the background of that turbine. It has been the topic of a lot of conversation and discussion. Our engineering firm was in regular contact with multiple turbine manufacturers. One of their responsibility was to, I guess, soften up the market, to identify whether a turbine might be available to supply this project to make the bid successful. And they were in contact with many turbine suppliers. Single turbine projects at that time, this was at the peak of the wind energy market in New England and across the nation, and single turbines were simply not readily available. The delivery time was 18 to 24 months. We, of course, have a business plan that requires the town to borrow and then repay funds. Within 24 months, we would have made 2 debt service payments without having a turbine in hand. So the deliveries, it was an important issue to us. The growing industry attracted general contractors with little or no experience in wind turbine construction. We talked a little bit about that with the manufacturer. also is an issue with the general contractors. The chief concerns shared with General Electric to our engineers was about the inexperience of the contractors, and ultimately GE determined that it would not supply a turbine to our project. That frankly was irrelevant because we would have had to bypass the second low bidder to get to the GE turbine, which would have been almost insurmountable in the procurement process. Following the very thorough evaluation of the low bidder and the second low bidder, the first bidder was bypassed. The contract was awarded to DNC Construction on December 5th, 2009. They proposed to provide a Vestas V80 1.65 turbine. There's a little of the specifications. It was warranted with a sound curve, with a power sound curve. It was proven by testing, and it was compliant with town and state standards. And then Christmas Eve occurred in 2009. We were under contract for a $5 million wind turbine project, as you know, that had been in planning for 6 or 7 years. We received a notice from the federal government that the determination of flight approach hazard was essentially revoked. The Coast Guard re-looked at its previous determination that had been issued 2 times prior that a hazard existed to the installation of that turbine. Had very serious potential consequences. We were under contract and had our own performance obligations. The town worked very publicly and very closely with Congressman Delahunt and his staff, Senator Murray and her staff, the Federal Aviation Administration, the U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Air Force, and we collaborated with Notice Clean Energy, who was also planning for a turbine very nearby. While the project was delayed, with the assistance of many federal and local agencies, the actual flight approach to the Coast Guard runway was changed. Every pilot that flies into the Coast Guard Air Base has a new plate in their flight manual that, many of you know a lot more about this than I do, that requires them to take a different step-down approach because of both the town's turbine and the Notice turbine. Ultimately, the town's determination of no hazard was reissued May 13, 2009, about a year after the IFB was issued. That change in flight approach made the Notice project possible. Without the flight approach change that was coordinated and implemented by the town of Falmouth, that project would not have proceeded. The Notice turbine was permitted on July 1, 2008. Then we're on to Wind 2. Special town meeting was required by the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act of 2009. We were identified on the Department of Environmental Protection's Clean Water Act intended use plan because they saw the same thing that the town saw, that the installation of a wind energy facility at the wastewater treatment facility was in alignment with the federal, state, and local goals of clean water and sustainability. It reinforced our community's thought process relative to the project realignment with environmental and operational sustainability. Community outreach continued. There was a letter from the Energy Committee to the neighbors in 2010, and those circles just identify notice that the first turbine was erected in 2009, and that that the Energy Committee was letting the community know that the November 2009 Fall Town Meeting approved the second turbine. The ARRA program and DEP accepted the project as feasible, and town meeting adopted the project and appropriated funding. Commencement of commercial operations. Wind 1 commenced commercial operations on April 6, 2010. Since Wind 1 began operation, the town received complaints of noticeable sound. A study immediately commenced in collaboration with neighbors and a joint meeting. In the summer of 2010, just weeks after the commencement, the neighbors to Wind 1 engaged an attorney. And the town then immediately began a response protocol. Town's approach and response included an evaluation of the turbine by Vestas, a sound study by a technical consultant in collaboration with the neighbors, a tracking system and evaluation, engagement with the Board of Health, community meetings, a mitigation study, and we voluntarily asked the Department of Environmental Protection to conduct additional sound study. The litigation phase really was in full swing. Within weeks of the commencement, as I mentioned, the community was actively engaged with a litigator or an attorney. And I do note that the attorney representing the neighbors expressed his appreciation to the town for our immediate and swift action, sent us a letter to that effect, and to our responsiveness to a land use issue in a way that he had not seen another community react. On July 8th, 2010, we issued a sound study update. We asked for neighbors to be involved in that, to provide us information about what they're experiencing, specifics so that the town could get a better understanding of exactly what the nature and constituency of the complaints were. And there was a commitment to ongoing engagement, tracking, and problem solving. Summer 2010, we issued our first wind energy update, which talks specifically about some of the sound issues. That was issued to everyone involved in that tracking program, as well as available to the community at large. Wind 2 continued, even with that process ongoing. The project was approved by the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. It was approved by DEP. The SRF program, the Clean Water Fund, awarded a 0% interest, 100% forgiveness loan that the town manager just shared the details of. And a contract was awarded by the Board of Selectmen to Loomis Construction. I think we've covered all this. I don't need to go through it again. There was a caring, thoughtful response by the town. There were operational curtailments, various, continuous demonstrated willingness for compromise. The wind turbine option process was fully supported by the Board of Selectmen in a genuine effort to constructively engage the neighborhood and the town. At least 2 board members and the town manager's office was present at every one of the 25 meetings held. Only at the conclusion of that process did the Board of Selectmen place a question to the town. A little bit of the wind turbine option process, and this is really to give you a sense of what's available in terms of public information about the project. Those are the download documents on the wind turbine options process. The 25 meetings, nearly all of them are available on video. All of them are posted with their agenda and minutes. The town initially operated both wind turbines on a 24-hour basis. In April 2012, the selectmen voluntarily reduced the hours to 12 hours a day in response to concerns expressed by neighbors. The voluntary reduction in hours was also intended by the Board of Selectmen to encourage neighbors to enter into a formal consensus building process with the aid of a professional mediator. The consensus building meetings commenced in April and ended 8 months later with no substantive resolution. And there was the town vote, and that was placed on the ballot by the Board of Selectmen. At the May 2013 annual town election, the voters overwhelmingly rejected a ballot question to authorize the town to begin a process of decommissioning and removal of the wind turbines. A supermajority of more than 2-to-1 margin overall voted not to finance the removal of wind turbines. This vote included a 54% majority not to remove the wind turbines in the actual precinct in which the turbines are located. Again, the Board of Selectmen then took up the issue of how they intended to operate the wind turbines, both of them constructed and installed at that point, and what their plan was to address both litigation and what they saw as genuine concern of the neighbors. They embarked on a several-month-long evaluation process. They continued with caring, thoughtful responses with a demonstrated willingness to compromise. They explored the options and issues presented by the wind turbine option process, including mitigation alternatives, fiscal impacts, geographic constituents, the nature of the complaints. All of those reports are also on the town's website, and they're listed there. They looked at the fiscal issues, the different operating schedules. This is not presented because I think you're going to be able to read all this, but to demonstrate that the board, and these are just some of them, there were many operating scenarios that they looked at. They looked at how operating scenarios may generate certain amounts of revenue to implement mitigation measures. They looked at the physical geography. Where did the complaints occur? How do complaints occur in relative to the body of residents in the region? How do the complaints relate to other turbines in the area? In conclusion, in September 2013, the Board of Selectmen adopted operating hours of 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. to eliminate an operational budget deficit and in deference to the concerns of neighbors, of neighboring residents, allowing 8 hours of sleep. The current status of operations, I know it's fine.
Quiet, please.
Wind 1 was shut down in compliance with the ZBA order. Wind 2 continues to operate in accordance with the court order from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 6 days a week, with certain holiday exclusions. In terms of overall wind policy, the Board of Selectmen has consistently supported the operation of wind turbines with modified operation for 5 years after 8 years of planning and decision-making. The wind resource in Falmouth is a valuable community asset that should be preserved for this generation and for all generations. Over time, the community will change, as will community tolerance. What will not diminish is our demand for energy and our responsibility to protect the environment and reduce and eliminate reliance on non-renewable resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring the lights back. This is a hearing. We're going to allow public comment. We want to be careful. We let that go on. There was a little redundancy between those two presentations where we hopefully won't have to cover the same parts twice with all your complaints, but we'd like to hear from all of you. Who's ready? Oh yeah, the other thing is, we are here not to discuss the environmental issues. This is just to discuss the wind turbine bylaw, okay? There's all kinds of court cases on the nuisance and whatnot. That's not what we're here about. We'd like to keep the comments particularly to the proposed bylaw change that we're dealing with tonight. That's all this board can deal with. We have no other authority, so it doesn't matter. We have to focus on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My initial comment is just questions for the presenters that have already spoken. One to Frank.
Identify, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mark Cool, Precinct 6. The first one would be to Frank, and a little clarification on the topic about the planning board is allegedly eliminated as a special permit granting authority because of the 2013 bylaw. I'd like a little bit more explanation on that, if you would be so kind. And the other question would be to Heather regarding in the public bidding process, Mr. Chairman, she had mentioned performance specs were part of that. So my question would be, during that public bidding process, was there any impact specs that were part of that process as well? Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Frank. We'll try to answer these. Keep moving quickly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My comment about the 2013 amendment to the zoning bylaw is that it set up the planning board as a special permit granting authority for wind energy systems, but it limited the size of the maximum size of a wind energy system to less than the size of the existing turbines, so you really cannot grant a special permit.
Heather, are you prepared to answer the other questions?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If you could provide a little bit more specificity about what you mean by impact specifications.
Obviously, it would be, my concern would be impact to, I'm sorry.
These are really off topic. They're questions about their work,
Presentation.
but they're not about our bylaw change, okay? So
I'll retract that question.
Granted, you may want to know this, but it's not going to help us in our decision. We can't take it into consideration.
All right, I'll retract the
Your
question.
point can be used at another venue.
Thank you.
Next, we'll work across the room. Okay, please go on.
Good evening. Linda Okagawa from 821 West Falmouth Highway, Planning Board. My questions are things like, will the town be allowed to repeat its ill-informed rush to operate two poorly sited industrial-sized wind turbines without a public process again. With no questions asked, no specific data, no appropriate noise, flicker, or pressure studies, or a site plan submitted and discussed. A special permit is about due diligence and a comprehensive public fact-finding and decision process. It also ensures that conditions can be attached to mitigate circumstances determined during a thorough and educated review of impacts. Once again, we see the town rushing, the selectmen pressuring, and now an end run around the town code. And I guess they hope the highest court in Massachusetts, which said they need a special permit. This all precludes the assurance of due diligence and denies the opportunity for decision makers to fully educate themselves before voting. It's what led to the mess they're in today. When drafting the current wind energy bylaw, the planning board, and I guess that was most of you, spent months and months learning about wind turbines. You learned about sound, pressure, equipment characteristics, turbine siting, and neighbor impacts, just to name a few. If you support this article, you will knowingly short-circuit the careful review of these large-scale projects that you sought to secure. As a Falmouth resident, I urge the board to reject the Selectmen's wind turbine zoning amendment proposal. I urge you to encourage town meeting not to rush, not to skip analysis, and not to hand over unexamined control of turbine operation to selectmen whose orientation is so hurried and one-sided. The wisdom of your board and the vision of the 2013 town meeting declared all wind turbines, regardless of ownership or financial status, shall undergo a special permit process. And I can't think of any reason to reverse that wisdom. Haste probably makes waste again.
Thank you. Yes, we'll move across. The opponents are speaking right now. We've already, go ahead.
Yeah, Daymount, Precinct 6. My wife and I strongly oppose the town's proposal to change the turbine bylaws. We believe it's a terrible precedent which would undermine every town bylaw and the intent and purpose of every committee. It sends the signal that any town committee which makes a decision that the selectmen don't like will be overruled either by this sort of change or by appeal, such as the town's appeal of the last 3 out of 4 decisions by the Zoning Board of Appeals, your colleagues. Furthermore, it fails to follow the direction of the State Appeals Court to get a special permit, and subsequently the Barnstable Court, since the Barnstable Court was ordered to administer that decision. Judge Rufo, in his hearing on this matter, which all of us attended, specifically said that he was sending this task to the Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals for implementation. At that Barnstable Court hearing on this step, we heard Town Attorney Frank Duffy, with Selectman Mary Pat Flynn in attendance, and I believe Mr. Patterson as well, right in the courtroom, say to Judge Rufo that the town welcomes this decision to send this to the ZBA and this opportunity to get a permit, and that everyone would have their fair chance to openly express their views. I feel very sad about this, but what trust can we have in selectmen or a town's legal representative which makes such an agreement openly in court before a judge and then totally reverses that position several weeks later? We respectfully ask the planning board to follow the directions of the courts and oppose the selectmen's warrant so that the special permit can be applied for. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving across, yes, in back.
Deborah Siegel, Precinct 6. I am not an abutter. I was not going to speak tonight because I've already sent you a letter, which I assume, an email, which I assume you received. the lies build up, and I heard more of them tonight than I've heard in a long time. And I would like to encourage you to stand by the work you put in to a bylaw. And I believe it was close to 2 years, maybe not that long, but yes, Pat, I'm right. 2 years' worth of work. 4 years' worth of work most of you put into a bylaw that was very well crafted and that town meeting, in its wisdom, voted for. For the selectmen to now come around and make, as Mr. Mount said, I believe, an end run to try to change that is not in the interests of good government and democracy. And I urge you to not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, in the rear? I missed you, I'm sorry, I'll get you next.
Colin Murphy, resident of Falmouth. So the whole thing hinges on the special permit. They threw a lot of numbers up there, you know, how many millions of dollars it's gonna, you know, the sky's gonna fall, and all the professionals they had, and then they just kind of, you know, special permit wasn't necessary, so we went on past that. With all those millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars at stake, shouldn't they have got a few opinions on the permitting process, on the special permit? I think that's poor management. I mean, if this was a business, you'd all be fired. I mean, you can't just throw it back in our face and say, I mean, you can't just change the rules in the middle of the game. I mean, all that money at stake, why not get the special permit? Just go there, take the extra yard at that time. Get a second opinion. Go outside. You're getting all these opinions now after the fact, and the judge says you needed one. Should we, award them something later? Because, their intentions were good, but they made mistakes. They made crucial mistakes. Should we pay for all their mistakes? I don't think the town should. I just think it was done wrong. They had all those problems with one, and then they threw Win 2 in our face. They never fixed Win 1. I called up, why are you doing that? We have to do it. We have a contract. We have to do it. That's what I was told by someone in the town management. I mean, I don't think that's a good way to do it. They were just rushing. They had an agenda, and they wanted to see it through. And they didn't slow down and say, let's get all our I's dotted and our T's crossed. Let's just do this, because this is what we want. This is what we think is right. And they did it wrong. And it's just not right. And I think you guys just stick to your guns and make them get the permit that they need. We're not asking them to take it down, just get the special permit. Okay, get it?
Again, over here. You're next. Again, we're focusing on the bylaw. That's all we're here for tonight.
Good evening. John Fuller, Blacksmith Shop Road. And very simply, I implore you to not approve of this amendment tonight and urge you to not recommend it. That's my humble opinion, because I have been and still am mentally and physically impacted by these turbines. Thank you.
Yes, in the back there, the one I missed before. Can't see you through the crowd. There we go.
Mount, Precinct 6. I have a letter. I don't know if I can read that or just...
Did you send it to the file? We have one with your name on it already. Did you
No,
send an email?
this isn't from me. It's from
Okay.
someone who couldn't be here tonight.
No?
No, okay. And I just
Sorry.
turn it in?
You can turn it into file. We have a stack of them. Okay, now we're really looking for new comments, okay? Okay, so those of you who come up, I'd really like you to stick to the new comments. Okay, we'll start working here. Come up, please, yeah. We're looking for something new now, which is going to be hard, but please try.
Yeah, Malcolm Donald, 124 Ambleside Drive. I would like to suggest that this bylaw change is going to be spot zoning. And it's my understanding that spot zoning is illegal.
There's an opinion, it's been presented that it isn't, and it's been through all the courts. I don't think, that argument's been, it's old.
It's old?
Old, yes, it's been submitted before, so thank you for having it, but I don't.
Okay, it just seems to me like if it's a spot and...
We're talking about an amendment to a bylaw, not a rezoning. You're really off topic here. This conversation tonight is, we're not creating a zoning class, and we're not rezoning a piece of property. We are talking about an amendment to an existing bylaw. That's what the topic is tonight.
Okay.
So even if you're right, it's the wrong place to bring it up.
Okay, all right, well, I beg your pardon, and
Okay.
I'm sorry to waste your
There'll
time.
be another time, we can bring it up again someplace else, not tonight. Yes?
I'm Judy Fenwick, member of Town Meeting Precinct 1, and also a participant in the wind turbine options process. I have in front of me the warrant for April 2013 annual town meeting and November 2012 annual town meeting with the bylaws that were presented by the planning board. And I just want to read a section from the 2012 draft bylaw that went before town meeting. And it was section E, and it was entitled Applicability/Exceptions. You know this well. Number 1, under exceptions, no wind energy system as defined shall be constructed or modified without first receiving a special permit from the planning board as outlined herein. And number 2, wind energy systems having a rated capacity of 300 watts or less are exempt from the provisions of this article. Then there was an amendment on town meeting floor to add a third section, which was an amendment by Richard Latimer to grandfather, and I don't have the exact language of that amendment, but I believe it was to grandfather those turbines that were already in existence. When you brought this article back to town meeting in 2013, the exception 240-166D, now just called exceptions, read, any provisions or requirements of this chapter to the contrary notwithstanding, and this language received an amendment in the recommendations further on, read, any wind energy system, WES, lawfully in existence as of this effective date of this article shall be considered conforming and may apply for a special permit under this article to alter, modify, relocate, or otherwise make improvements consistent with Article 34. And I would just ask you to stand by that piece of the article.
Thank you. Anything new?
Good evening, members. My name is Todd Drummy, Blacksmith Shop Road. My first point had to do with spot zoning, so I'm going to have to approach the board afterwards to learn more about what you found out there, because I think it is spot zoning, but I'll move on. Wind 1 is an illegal structure right now. The Court of Appeals has ruled it needed a special permit. It was built without the proper permit. And my question to you folks would be, has the planning board ever been asked to recommend an amendment to the bylaws which would make an illegally built structure legal and do that retroactively? I can't imagine that it's ever happened before. If you get caught without the proper permit, I'm sorry, why should anyone apply for a special permit to build a structure? Just build it. If you get caught without the proper permit, just head to town meeting and change the bylaw. Explain the financial hardship you will endure if the town upholds its current bylaws. What kind of precedent is that going to set? The idea turns the whole zoning process upside down. Zoning's about planning before you build things, to put rules in place that people have to follow. My third point, the Zoning Board of Appeals has ruled these turbines are in violation of Section 240-110 nuisances of the bylaws. Barnstable Courts issued a preliminary injunction limiting the hours of operation because of those nuisance issues. And this raises another legal question. How can you, the planning board, favorably recommend a zoning amendment regarding a structure that's in violation of other sections of the bylaw. I just don't understand how it's even possible. This board spent many months studying the turbine issue when it wrote the current bylaw. You concluded and town meeting confirmed that all wind turbines need a special permit. I can't think of one good reason why you should change that. I urge the board to reject the proposed amendment and hope you'll recommend that town meeting reject it as well. And I just want to read a short quote from the decision from the appeals board, or the appeals court, which made the town have to apply for the special permit. The judge noted, and he's referring to the lower court judge, the judge noted in upholding the building commissioner that the list of municipal purposes in 240-30B of the bylaw was illustrative and not limiting. While that is an accurate characterization of the list, it does not adequately consider the weight that must be given a specific bylaw provision that has been drafted to take into account the public welfare. The classification of windmills as a permitted municipal purpose fails to consider 240-33G5. That was that accessory use that brought it into the old windmill bylaw, which is part of a comprehensive scheme to include wind turbines in the bylaw and control their placement and impact in the town. You have a comprehensive scheme to control the placement of turbines. It's the bylaw you folks wrote 2 years ago and town meeting approved. Why we're trying to change that, while we heard a lot of information from the town, I didn't hear one reason except money.
Okay, we're looking for something new.
Thank you.
We've already heard from you, Mark.
It was just questions, so I'd like to make a
Okay.
comment.
Okay,
You get another one.
okay. Someone new, yes, please come up. I'd like to spread it around here.
Spread around the newspapers.
I'm Lynn Whitehead. I live at Gregory Lane. I am not in Precinct 6. I'm in Precinct 1. I only got into this because of a student I had in 4th grade who couldn't sleep. He looked sick for weeks. Finally contacted him and pulled him out, said, "You need to see the nurse." And he told me what was going on. And that's why I actually got involved with these neighbors.
We need to keep the comments on the
Okay.
bylaw.
The bylaw that I would like to talk about is the risks that were stated by GE. And I have a question for Heather.
I think we're off topic here, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm talking about ice throw.
But that's not the topic for tonight.
But
We're
the ice,
talking about...
why would you support a...
We're not supporting it. You misunderstand me.
No, I understand
We
you're
are
not...
focusing tonight
Okay,
on changes to the bylaw. And that's all this group, that's all we can do. And we have a proposed bylaw. It was read to the group. It relates to whether they need a special permit or not. We'd like to hear comments on that. Comments on the wind
All right.
turbine, we all know.
okay. So you're considering all the risks that go with this and stated by companies?
We considered it for years.
You did, yes, okay. Well, let's hope you still consider it, and thank you very much.
Okay, I'm looking for something new. If not, I think we've heard quite a bit tonight. Yes, please. Ready?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Dave Moriarty, Precinct 6 Town Meeting member. And I'd just like to thank the board for having such foresight so many years ago, back in the 80s, writing our original wind turbine bylaw. It's an excellent job, has protected everyone in the town. Everyone has been protected in the town with this bylaw. And I just want to encourage you to go along with the process. We need to go through the special permit. If it makes the muster, then There's nothing, we've exhausted all of our legal avenues, and we'll have to just
We're here
live with.
tonight. We're not talking about a special permit. We're talking about a change in the bylaw. You're
Right.
really going in, and that's another hearing for another time.
I
You're going-
understand that.
That's the wrong
Well,
place.
I
That's in the front of another board.
just want to bring it to your attention that I think that this board should reject this
Okay.
proposal and not give it.
We could go on forever if we have to revisit. I agree, don't worry, we heard you, okay? But we would like to, anyone else that wants to talk about the bylaw tonight is what I'm ready to hear.
Well,
Thank you. Okay, Mark, this is the last one. We've been at it for a while.
I'll be brief. Mark Cooligan, Precinct 6. I'll be brief. In your examination to determine whether to or not recommend the bylaw amendment, I believe one of the tools that you use is you go to the LCP. And so I'm looking at the LCP with regards to the energy. Let's see, let me look at my note real quick. Energy element policy, where it says, the policy will strongly support the use of appropriate renewable energy sources. I think the hinge word when you guys did your due diligence on the 2013 bylaw was the word appropriate. It was discussed at length during discussions, meetings. In fact, the April 10th, 2012 meeting, Mr. Curry urged to focus on the term industrial wind turbines. It was discussed and it was determined, and the meeting minutes says that unanimously the board decided that a by right land use wasn't appropriate. So to keep it short, I would hope you would maintain that vision and that wisdom. Thank you.
Tied it together there at the end. Okay, any other comments? Well, we pretty much divided the time equally. We listened for an hour for your presentation. We're splitting up. Okay, Sam, my board would like to hear from you.
I just want to make the comment about the accusation that somehow or other the selectmen are lying, that we're callous to the needs of the abutters. Nothing could be further from the truth. I say that honestly. I'll look any of you straight in the eye.
Sam, you're out of order. You know, you can stand, but you have to talk through the, at other meetings, you do, but this one you have to address it through the chairman,
Okay,
please.
excuse me. Sam Patterson, Selectman. I guess I forgot to even introduce myself. I just wanted to say that, I, in March of last year, actually went to Mr. Anderson's property at his invitation on a day when the winds were gusting over 20 miles an hour. I, at that point, was very eager to find out what the nature of the nuisance was so that maybe we could come up with some kind of a compensation. These are efforts that I've made personally as a selectman to empathize. But my
We're
point
talking about the bylaw here. I would love to hear your comments on the changes of the bylaw.
No, this is only to illustrate the fact that I think I have taken due diligence to look out for the interests of all the citizens
I
of this
agree,
community.
and I probably should have
Thank you.
stopped some of the complaints that they said. There was a few things that they were said. We were here to talk about the bylaw, not about what the selectmen did or didn't do, and I'm sorry that if you have comments on the bylaw, I'd like to hear that. I don't want to revisit everything else. We'll be going on forever.
Well, I guess the one thing I would like to say is that I don't think that this board should be under prioritizing the need for our generations to be investing in renewable energy. And it's
off topic, Sam.
Well, this is an enabling
Point of order.
bylaw.
This is off topic.
I've heard enough. What do you guys
Please.
think?
We're talking about the bylaw and only the bylaw.
Do I hear a motion to close the meeting?
I move that this hearing be closed.
Any seconds?
I would second that.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. We're very well behaved tonight. I appreciate your efforts.
Is it, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, this point of order, are you taking that under advisement?
We're going to take it under
Take it under
advisement.
advisement.
You need a motion to that effect.
Okay, then I move that we take the
Take it
matter
under
under advisement.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Yes. Correspondence file right here. They were great. No bricks were thrown.
Want to have them move along?
Okay, next. Can you, folks, we do have to finish our meeting, so if I could ask you to leave quietly.
Can I get up?
Yeah, let's take a recess. We're going to recess till you all leave, because we can't continue with the noise you're making.
Julia,
Kind of told them it was over.
I watched the meeting last night till 11:30. I went to bed.
Reconvene. Thank you. Okay, we're back in order. General correspondence. Just for the members of the board, we have several emails and a couple new letters tonight that have come in, and if it's in the file for anyone to come and look at till the next week, okay?
Any particular subjects?
No, they're all relates to this issue, either for or against, and they're most of the things we've just heard.
Okay.
Yes, Paul?
Are there any for the windmills?
There's one for, and I haven't read the 2 or 3 that have dropped off yet tonight. I haven't read those yet. There was about 10 against and one in favor.
Thank you.
And future agenda items. Anybody? Paul, you have some?
I do have one.
Yeah.
We're going to be taking up the element on sustainability, resiliency, coastal resiliency. And I happen to receive a report that I think is worth sharing with the committee, or with the board. I mentioned to Mr. Curry today, I'd like to do it, provide it to him, and you can discuss it with Mr. Curry and see whether it's appropriate to share that with the board members prior to the meeting that we're scheduled to have with the Board of Selectmen to discuss coastal resiliency. It's a report that is very comprehensive, done for the town of Hingham, and it covers all the issues that we've been trying to deal with, and I think it might be helpful background information for us to develop the activities that we're proposing. So I will send it to Brian. He could discuss it with you if you think it's appropriate.
Thank you.
I suggest we share that with the members. It's a lengthy report, so it should be provided.
Is it electronically or paper?
I have it electronically, but it's about 70 pages, so it's not something you're going to stick in your binder and look at it before the meeting. So
My preference is to give it to Brian electronically.
I will give it to Brian. I just want to bring up that I think it's worth looking at because it gives a lot of background information on the whole subject.
Are you asking that for a future agenda item, we have a discussion about this document?
Yeah, I think we should. Before we get to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. And I think that's scheduled sometime in late November, perhaps, or maybe December. So there's time to do that, but it'd be worth looking at it and take what you can from it.
Sounds good.
Got it.
Anybody else? Yes, Ralph?
Yeah, when you go to next meeting, I'd just like to know if Brian could briefly tell us what he's got planned for the agenda on that.
Next meeting, we'll be taking up a recommendation for the special town meeting. What you heard tonight, you took under advisement. You have all this information to review. My expectation would be the only thing on the agenda for your discussion.
That's basically the only agenda item then?
I want to try to keep it uncluttered for you. It's an important decision.
Okay.
Yes, Pat?
We have the precinct meetings coming up, and we usually see who's going to what here. So I don't know whether,
We have the schedule to look at?
I printed it off, but I didn't bring it with me.
Will we have time to look at it?
When's
Next
the
week?
first one, Brian? I think we do.
Next week.
but I
Next
don't-
week.
Precincts 1 and 2 is early, but then the rest of them are the following week.
It's the Wednesday right after our next meeting is mine.
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
So,
Precinct 8 and 9 are next Wednesday.
anyone know them by heart?
I don't. I usually go to 5, 6.
Paul, you gonna do 1, 1, 2?
Yes. I do 8 and 9.
And I usually cover 3 in my old precinct. I'm in 9 now, but Ralph covers that.
When is 4?
I don't know, but I've been often going to 3 and
I can try to do
4 and 7
4.
used
I
to go
can't do,
together.
I'm not available to do 1 and 2 this year, but I could possibly do 4, but I don't know when it is.
I don't know when it is either, but I'm going to say I'm going to go to 3.
I'll check it out on
Whenever
my
it
own.
is.
Okay? So we'll have some pretty good coverage there.
Well, that takes care of that, without it in front of us.
Yep. Well, that pretty much concludes our agenda.
I think we, once again, need to get into reports from the committee representatives that were attending. The meetings were represented by each of the liaisons. Maybe we can do it after town meeting, though.
Yeah, I think after town meeting, that'd be a good idea.
Because there's been a lot going on.
Oh, there'll be a lot there'll be a real lot.
Have a question from the public?
No, we don't have a public discussion.
Sorry.
This is ours.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.